I guess in some respects we could actually label tonight's program Back to the Political Future. Bo and his wife Beth reside in Pine Mountain. They moved there in September of 1993, or I should say they moved back there in September of 1993. Bo is the chairman and CEO of the Ida Cason Callaway Foundation. And you all know the foundation, you all know Callaway Gardens. They returned there from Colorado, where since 1970, Bo has also served as either the president or the chairman of Crested Butte Mountain Resort. Bo graduated from West Point. He served as an Army officer in Korea during the Korean conflict. And he was elected to Congress in Georgia's old 3rd Congressional District in 1964 as a Republican. That was unheard of at the time in the state of Georgia. Then in 1966, he was the Republican nominee for governor of the state of Georgia, and he won the election. But he didn't win a majority. He won a plurality because of a write-in vote. So the election went to the Georgia legislature, and it was predominantly Democratic, and they refused to acknowledge that he won the election, and they gave the election to the Democrat. Sometimes I think about how politics might have been different in Georgia had Bo Callaway actually been sworn in as governor of Georgia in January of 1967. He went on from there to serve as Secretary of the Army. He then did something that not many of us get to do. He became a political force in another state. He went to Colorado with his ski resort, if you will. But he didn't go there just to make money. He did public service too. And he became very involved in the Republican Party of Colorado. And so he has made his mark politically, not only in Georgia, but in the state of Colorado. He's a civic leader. He's a professional leader. He's a political leader. But since I have been 16 years old, Bo Callaway has been one of my personal heroes. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a great American, Bo Callaway.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom. Boy, for that day in America 30 years ago, you sure made up for it tonight. Thank you. That never had a better introduction. I'm just delighted to be here. When Tom called me and asked me if I would come, I said, of course I would like to come. I would like to be with this great organization. And obviously I would like to be here to pay tribute to Griffin Bell. Anytime I have a chance to be with Griffin Bell, it's a good day. And I'm just delighted to be here. I was also asked to speak for a moment or two on the difference in politics between today and those days 30 years ago. Incidentally, Americus is in Sumter County, where my great-grandmother lived for 105 years without, to my knowledge, ever leaving Sumter County. And so I have some great respect for Americus High School and the people of Americus. 30 years ago, politics was a little different. We had a one-party state. As everybody knows, nobody ran for anything except in Democratic primaries, and winning the Democratic primary was what they called tantamount to election, and a lot of people would go around the country and said, what do you do? Well, I'm trying to stop the tantamount. And didn't seem to work. There was always, the tantamount was there. Just to give you an idea of Georgia 30 years ago, not long ago, we have 159 counties, 158, 100% Republican. Fannin County never seceded, so Fannin County sort of stayed Republican. 158 were 100% Democrat, I meant to say. 158 counties, 100% Democrat. 158 Democrat sheriffs, 158 Democrat clerks, 158 Democrat ordinaries. It was a Democratic state. There had not been a congressman or a senator elected since Reconstruction, almost 100 years. And it was my thought at that time that a two-party system would be important. I still feel that way. Let me tell you the difference today. We're almost approaching a one-party state from the other direction, from a Republican direction. I live in Harris County. John White he used to live in Harris County there with me. And it's a rural county, truly rural. Back in 30 years ago, the few Republicans we had were around the suburbs of the major cities, maybe one or two legislators. That was all that was there that was Republican. Nothing rurally. Today in Harris County, at the last election we had, we re-elected a Republican member of the General Assembly for Harris County without opposition. We elected a Republican state senator without opposition. We elected a Republican congressman by a landslide in the most rural part of Georgia. We've come a long way. As we all know, we now have 8 out of 11 congressmen who are Republican. And in many ways, we're going on to develop a Republican state. The only place we don't have it now is in local elections, but we're beginning to get those as time goes on. We're contesting many, many of those. As a partisan Republican, you would think I must be extremely pleased to have, particularly in Congress, which I think is so important, to have 8 out of 11 Republicans. And I am. It's excited. It's sort of a part of a life's work that I feel very good about. And yet, you know, there's some things about that I really don't like. We have 8 out of 11 Republicans in Georgia, to some measure because we have designed districts to give 8 out of 11 Republicans. And you know what we ought to be doing is having competitive districts. When I was chairman of the Colorado Republican Party in 1980, when we had the redistricting going on there, I came up with an idea. There were 6 congressional seats, and I said it would be very easy in Colorado to get 6 competitive congressional seats where every year you have an election, and there'd be 6 elections where you had a chance, Democrat or Republican, anyone had a chance, they'd be competitive. Because Colorado is just a 50-50 state, half Democrats, half Republicans. You could do that quite easily. I submitted a plan as my plan to do that. That did not happen. We went to the courts who finally did the redistricting, and what do you suppose they did? They protected incumbents. They gave the Democrats 3, they gave Republicans 3, and said that's fair. What is fair about saying to the people of Colorado that for 10 years you will never have an election? I could tell you for 10 years who's going to win every seat. The Republicans are going to win these 3, the Democrats are going to win these 3, and that has happened. We're getting that way. I think you're probably going to find for the next 10 years you're going to have 8 Republicans and 3 Democrats, no matter who runs. So in effect, why have elections? Why not just say don't have elections for the next 10 years? And what a wonderful thing it would be, and Pierre, you can do something about this. What a wonderful thing it would do, the next redistricting we have, we say don't look after incumbents, don't look after Republicans, don't look after Democrats. Let's get districts that have a fairness and representation that are congenial from the district, and let's try to make them as competitive as they can be. And let the Republicans take their chance and let the Democrats take their chance and not build districts that are entirely for one party or the other. I think that will be great, and I hope the time that comes that will come to do that. Well, that's so much of what I am to say about politics. I could talk a lot about my friend Newt Gingrich, who is from this county here, Cobb County, of course. And I guess the only thing I would say about Newt is if he really does stay the course, and there's some question about that, he will, but I mean if his whole Congress can stay the course, I think there's a chance to show to the American people that people who are elected on a platform and do what they say they're going to do are respected by the American people. I think there's a chance that you will see the kind of people who are representing a less burdensome government, a more chance for individuals to handle their own life for the next 20, 30 years to have a much more influence on the government than they have had. And so that's why I'm hoping he will stay that course. If he ever deviates from it, he'll be just like everybody else. And there's no way that Republicans can compete with Democrats if you're trying to see who can do more with the government money. Democrats are just better at that than Republicans. But the reason I'm really here tonight is to say a word about Griffin Bell. I've got a lot of Democrat friends. As anyone who's ever served in any office knows that no matter what your party is and what your partisanship is, you make a lot of friends in the other party. And I've got a lot of good Democrat friends. and I'm very proud to be a friend of Griffin Bell. I've been a friend for a long time. He's had an illustrious career. I first knew him when he was at King and Spalding as an outstanding attorney before going on to be appointed to the Circuit Court of Appeals as a federal judge. We all knew him as Attorney General, where in the Carter administration, Griffin Bell was the one you called whenever you wanted anything done, because you know that Griffin would understand your problems and Griffin could get it done, whether it was in his place or not. And today, Griffin Bell, back at King and Spalding, takes on the most important law cases, the most prestigious, the most public of anybody in America. Who was picked by George Bush to represent George Bush personally? Griffin Bell. Who was picked to represent term limits? The states are doing term limits throughout the country. Griffin Bell. And I'll make a prediction. To the surprise of 99% of the news media, to the surprise of 75% of you here, the Supreme Court in the next month or two is going to rule in favor of the states being able to put term limits on federal office. And if they don't, it'll be because they didn't listen to Griffin. You know, all of us in any business, I think, like to be called by flattering terms. If you're a politician, you like to be called a public servant. If you're a businessman, you like to be called maybe an entrepreneur or something of that kind. If you're a newspaper editor, you like to be called as objective. If you're a senator, you like to be called a statesman. If you're a bureaucrat, you like to be called responsive. If you're from the IRS, you like to be called helpful. But what would a lawyer want to be called? Gosh, an attorney, that doesn't help any. And I can't think of anything a lawyer would want to be called, but what would a lawyer like to have and be known for? I think it would be common sense. Griffin is the essence of common sense. Everyone that knows Griffin knows that Griffin is Mr. Common Sense. During the Carter administration, everybody would say, you know, you can call Griffin. He's got common sense. And you could, and he did, and he would give you advice that would work. It's very uncommon to have common sense. I'll even be partisan and say that during the Carter administration, it was very uncommon to find people with common sense. And Griffin could always be called. I think the essence of Griffin Bell is always common sense. I had a personal experience with Griffin. Griffin was on the Circuit Court of Appeals in 1966. He was a member of the three-judge panel that decided whether the General Assembly could take the governorship away from the person who got the most votes. I had a personal interest in that. Griffin led the three-judge panel to a unanimous decision saying no, they could not take it away from the man that had most votes, and I've always thought that was a very common-sense solution. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, who had at least some of their members who voted by party line rather than Griffin's common sense, voted 5-4 to change that. But I've always had a great deal of respect for Griffin's soundness in that particular case. I've got a great deal of respect for Griffin because he serves on the board of Callaway Gardens. We've got a very prestigious board of Callaway Gardens, some of the people you know that are as prestigious as they can be, and none of them listen to me, none of them listen to anybody else except they listen to Griffin. So I can just sort of talk to Griffin a little bit about what's going on, and I sit back and everything works fine. I don't have to say anything. It's a great thrill and pleasure to have Griffin on our board at Callaway Gardens. I think he does a great service, and I think you'll see the gardens prosper in the years ahead, thanks in some large measure to Griffin. I wish I had known Griffin better through all the years than I have. I've not seen him as often as I would like. But I have never, ever been with him when my day was not enriched by being with him, when I did not feel better by being with him, when I did not learn something by being with him. And I think for a man who has earned the right to play golf and hunt quail like he likes to have him still continue to be on the forefront of so many important major projects in America is a great tribute to him a tribute to our state and a tribute to our country. I'm proud to be here tonight to honor Griffin Bell.